managed to organize another family get-together. We've got another cast of characters for another week during this project restart, I guess they would call it. Let's go ahead and introduce the fellas. Nahom, go ahead.
What's up, guys? It's Nahom back on to Blaze Ryan. Vamos DC United. Let's change it up this week.
B, go ahead.
Hey, what's up, people? B back again.
Ryan, go ahead.
Yo, what's going on, everybody? You know I'm here. You know what I'm about. You guys know what I'm about. Got these three guys here. I'm going to teach them football this evening. I'm going to teach all three of them football this evening. I know what I'm about. I know what
All
I'm about,
right.
man.
So, football's back in full swing. It feels like most teams are playing games every 3 days. Since the last time we got together, Liverpool have been crowned the champions of England. They actually won it with in a record pace. 7 games left, 21 points still left on the table. It's impossible for them to concede the title at this point, so they are officially champions. With that being said, we saw this team have only lost 2 games in 2 calendar years, essentially. Where does this team rank amongst the great EPL teams that we've seen, in your opinion? You want to go ahead and start in the home?
Sure. They got to be up there, man. They broke several records, one of which is the fastest title win. There's 7 games left, and those guys are already champions chilling. So that says a lot about them. And I think to be considered one of the greatest, we would want to see, because there are teams that did a treble, there's teams that did a double. So it's tough to get in that category. But what we have to keep in mind is the fact that they just won Champions League. And to win the league this year with the same squad, I think it plays a role into being one of the greatest teams in the EPL. So I rank them as very high, very high. I would say I don't think it's great. Winning back to back, I think is what City did and what Chelsea did, and I believe Manchester United did. I don't think they're quite there yet, but. Right under that, I would definitely put them right there, personally.
Bernard, so it seems like you may have a little bit of a different opinion on this topic. What are your thoughts?
I know we all think Liverpool is amongst the selected few in terms of being one of the greatest teams ever. They're in that conversation. So it's like a group of, let's say, 6 to 7 teams, right? But there are certain things that you use. Amongst the selected few, you're going to have certain things that you're going to use to differentiate between the greatest and just a very, very good team. No. The thing with Liverpool is this season, they can only win one. So that right there, where you're comparing them to the Man United teams of the past that win 2 titles in a season and stuff, that right there put a little asterisk beside their name, right? Unfortunately. Then the fact that they didn't go undefeated, which is another thing. So it's titles, and if you could manage to go undefeated. Points total is important, but the fact that it seemed like every year breaking that total, that is becoming less and less important in terms of what you're going to use to differentiate between them and the greatest teams ever. So the fact that they only have 1 title, I cannot put them even above Man City of last year. Because Man City cleaned up all 3 domestic titles in England. And Liverpool won the Champions League. And you could argue that a part of the reason why Man City wasn't performing as well they were performing last year was because their focus wasn't as locked in on the Premiership as though it was the prior 2 years, because they have won it 2 years in a row. So they are great.
What do you say? What do you say to the person who says to you, Liverpool have been just as great as Man City over the past 2 seasons. They lost by 1 point on the final day. So, their level of and they won the Champions League. So, in a different time, we're looking at Man City as one of the great teams. This team has been neck and neck with Man City for the past, well, this season they blew them away, but last season they gave them everything they wanted and more.
I would say that is false because Man City won 3 titles last year. 3. Not 1, 3. Liverpool won 1 title last year. Don't get me wrong, they won the major title. But only won 1 title, right? And this year, Man City already have a title and they're still on the verge of. You could still say, oh, they can still win another 2 more titles.
To your point, Man City has won 8 out of the 9 domestic titles.
There you go.
8 out of the last.
There you go.
Like
there
2
you
years.
Go.
2 years.
So again, we're not diminishing how good of a team they are, but when we are putting them amongst the greatest of all time, they are a little bit below because in terms of the Premiership, they're only going to have 1 title. Only 1 title in the season. They haven't won anything else. Last year, they won the Champions League, but people could argue that, Man City was just as good because Man City won all 3 domestic titles. And they beat the same team that won the Champions League to the Premiership title.
Yeah, I also get what you're saying, but I also don't think that all things exist in a vacuum because you can also look at Liverpool and say, hey, they made it to 2 consecutive Champions League finals as well, right? So they lost the first one and they came back and they won the second one. The next year they ran neck and neck to a team in the league who we're saying is, considered probably one of the all-time greats. And then this year, that same team that they ran neck and neck with, they blew them out of the water. So, I feel like, we've seen a progression of Liverpool to the extent that, right now, if they were to go on next season and continue on the same form that they're on, would any of us really be that surprised?
Well, all right, let me just say one thing before I let Ryan go, because I don't want to stop Ryan from having his say on this, right? The only thing with that, what you're saying, Kevin, is that Arsene Wenger, every time people put a knock against Arsene Wenger, people always say, oh, you haven't won in Europe, right? You said Liverpool went to 2 finals. Arsene Wenger went to 2 finals. People don't care about that. You see, because he didn't win it, you can still make the argument. You making the final is great, but it's one thing to make the final, but people don't remember who makes the final. I remember because I'm an Arsenal fan. I'm a big Wenger fan, but people don't remember that. People remember who win it, and he didn't win. That's what I'm saying in regards to that. No.
Yeah, but that has to hold weight, though. I would say making Champions League back-to-back years, or the Champions League final back-to-back, and then winning it, and then winning the Premier League. I mean, that has to hold weight. But it might not be the greatest in the EPL, but that has to hold like a heavy weight. I mean, Ryan, itching to get on.
Let me go ahead, Ryan.
Ryan,
can I eat?
We got a Liverpool fan.
Can I eat? Can I eat? So listen, like in my opinion, we gotta start breaking up football. In other sports, they do this. Like in basketball, they have post shot clock error. Like they break up everything in eras, right? So in modern era of football, because we can remember Liverpool hasn't won the league for 30 years. So we cannot say a team that hasn't won the league for 30 years is the best team out there when Man City just won it. They won the last 2. They went back to back, and they've won every single domestic. They've already won a domestic trophy this year. They are in the FA Cup semifinals against us, and you guys know what's going to happen to us. And so they're about to be back in another final. Okay, and Liverpool hasn't I like the football Liverpool play, but Man City in my opinion, in modern era, has been, you know, if you're going to say Liverpool is great, I'm going to say Man City has been even greater. Although I'm Klopp over Pep all day. You know, if I were as an Arsenal fan, if I were bringing in the manager right now, I prefer Klopp over Pep. But you know what they've done in modern day football, the money they spent at Man City, and what they've been able to do with that money spent, I think it's at the moment it's untouched. But you know, hats off to Liverpool for winning the Champions League. I mean, for winning the Premier League.
To Ryan's point, something I want to add is the fact that how early they got out in the Champions League as well. But round of 16s,
right?
If you look back at the great historic teams, they're not getting out that early if they're not, you know. So it's that has to go into it as well.
And you have teams who've done the treble. Like there's like we're not actually gaming teams right now, but there are
Arsenal. Remember Arsenal, when Arsenal went invincible, they got knocked out early in the Champions League too. Right.
But that invincible is the only invincible, so it holds a heavier.
It was a heavier weight, but because this is the funniest thing about this Liverpool. I think if Liverpool would have lost early, same thing with Arsenal. If they weren't on that undefeated streak, they would have gone further in the Champions League. Same thing with Liverpool. But you can see that pressure that the media put on them. Oh, you're undefeated. So most of their focus is on that. That's sort of they're not as concentrated or they're not as focused on the other titles because the undefeated burden becomes another issue on top of them just winning the games.
I disagree, B. You're playing a Champions League game. Remember, they went into that game 1-0. We're up 2-1. So I don't think it was a concentration problem that game. I think it was just more – it just didn't work out for them in that game. Simeone literally defended 90 minutes. Liverpool should have scored 3 or 4 goals. They just didn't get over the line. So I don't know if it was a concentration issue in getting out so early. Because it could also be the draw. You might get Barcelona in the 16. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
what are you going to do?
Yeah, but they got Atletico and they were leading 1-0 at Anfield. Like normally, I remember me talking to Ryan before that. People would want to put their house on it. You're going to Anfield. You're leading. You expect Liverpool to win. Or something like that.
I bet against it and won $20 off Ryan because I know Simeone. Like he's that's what he does. You know what I'm saying?
Right. No, I agree with both of you, but it was a tough tie, and the pressure of going to a third Champions League final. Like these guys, you know, like you said, it was a tough time at home. Hats off to Atletico; they defended well, but these guys' main focus was the Premier League title. You know what I'm saying? So in the back of their minds, like that is what they're out to get. The club hasn't won. A club with that type of history has not won the league in 30 years. That means when they won the league, I was 5 years old. Okay? That Bernard was 10 years old. You know what I'm saying? All right, go back on you.
But you know what's funny? Now that we say, I'm just gonna leave you, let you talk, Ryan. Now that we say that, I also think, which this is like, if we have to criticize Liverpool at any, I think they need more quality in depth. They have a very good squad, but for example, you see, they don't get a lot of goals from midfield because they have an industrious midfield. All 3 guys are 3 workman-like players. They score, but not enough, right? But my biggest issue is, you see, when the first year they wanted, that guy came up with a lot of big goals during that season, a whole lot of big goals. This season, he hasn't performed that well. Shaqiri hasn't penned out because he has been hurt a lot. Oxlade-Chamberlain has been hurt a lot. Even though when they come back healthy, they come back and they contribute a lot. But it's not as how it should be. That is why I was somewhat disappointed with them when they didn't get Timo Werner, because he would have fit them so well in terms of now that can play anywhere across the front 3, and then you could have rotated. You have four players that you could rotate for 3 positions. So on any given, because that front three on any given day, because there are going to be days where they're not performing. And when you change it up, you don't really have that coming off the bench. You don't really have that, because there's no threat to any one of those three guys that they're not going to play. And they depend on them three guys for so much goals for the entire season, right? Someone like Alexander-Arnold, I don't think he's going to have a season like what he's having this year. I don't think that's going to happen again next year.
I thought that last year, and he did have it. But it's one of those things like Harry Kane. Like, you don't think it's real until it actually happens. I think that kid is a player, man. But I agree with you, D.
Yes, he is a player, but
if Firmino gets hurt, your backup is Origi. You know what I'm saying? He like, it's not. It worked out this year. Remember, he got that winner against Everton in the last second. Like, certain things have worked out for them, but
do you know?
I think we gotta get. Go ahead.
You know what this reminds me of, and we used to say it about players. We used to say it about players on Manchester United all the time. It's like those guys have average players in their team, and those guys will come on in the 80th minute, and you just know that for some reason that those guys are going to end up scoring the goal. And I feel like that's how Liverpool are. It's like they have guys that on any other team that you think that they would be average, but for some reason in that squad, they play levels above what you think where you think they should be. And if you look at
it takes a lot of pressure off the rest of the guys when you have three guys or two guys scoring at the rate that Salah and Mane have been scoring at. It allows everybody else to play football, like, you know what I'm saying? Because those guys, for example, we see games. Bernard, we're Arsenal fans, right? We see games where we're winning 1-0, but the team is still under massive pressure because we're not scoring that second and third goal. You know, so what I see out of Liverpool is if one of those two guys were to start not performing, then you would see it affect the levels of everybody else. But as long as those guys are scoring 20 goals a season each, it makes life a lot easier. Life was a lot easier on the pitch with Jamie Ritchie there as opposed to no Jamie Ritchie.
Yeah, but there's a Liverpool and Van Dijk. Arsenal have David Luiz around. Two guys who can't play in a pep team, right? Two guys who's absolutely garbage, right? So because of that, they can sit on a 1-goal lead and be comfortable. Arsenal, as an Arsenal, like, I was watching the game on Sunday at the park, and there's Arsenal fan. When Arsenal was leading 1-0, they're like, don't worry, the other team gonna score. And I'm not talking opposite fans, I'm talking Arsenal fans. Don't worry, the other team gonna score. We know it's coming. We know it's coming. We know it's coming. And those guys are just keep leaving and coming back. The other team
against Brighton.
Yes, exactly, because there's a history of Arsenal defending poorly.
Right, but Bernard, so just to go against your point for a second, that same David Luiz has won titles with Chelsea and PSG because they're scoring goals. They're taking pressure off of him. But if we finish our chances against Brighton, we win that game. You can't piss away chances.
How did this turn into an Arsenal debate?
No, but Ryan, before David Luiz came to Arsenal, when David Luiz was at Chelsea, everyone except one person was saying David Luiz was garbage. Everyone. That's before he was at Chelsea. That's before he came to Arsenal. When he was playing for Brazil got in the World Cup, got destroyed. Got 7. When he was at PSG, when PSG bought him for 50 million, everyone was like, wait, is PSG serious? Are they crazy? David Luiz is no defender. That is why people put him in midfield. Not because he's an exceptional passer, because he can pass the ball, but when you're playing in midfield, you don't have that much time or space. But because he can win the ball, when he wins the ball in midfield, he loses it back because he cannot play under the pressure. David Luiz is just, and that was when he's at his highest. No, he's still making mistakes. So it's just, the difference is they have match winners in every position.
I think you guys
Position,
have been a bit harsh on David Luiz, to be honest with you. I think like as far as from what I saw, he wasn't your worst defender, and that's why he was starting week in and week out until he made those comical errors against and it was Brighton, no, against Manchester City. But if you put David Luiz, if you have a formation around David Luiz, he has to play. There's a reason why I think Arteta played a 3-back system in the most recent game. I don't think it was because of the way Sheffield played. I think it's to protect David Luiz. He played fantastic until he got hurt. There's nothing going on until he got hurt. So I think it's just right. It has to be the right system for David Luiz.
Guys.
I
don't want to turn this into a David Luiz debate because I think there's a lot more important issues.
But David Luiz needs to be discussed. There are more important issues. I'm gonna let you go.
You should have been.
But David Luiz needs to be discussed.
Oh, so
I agree.
Since we're going down that road, we're gonna have we're gonna have another year of David Luiz as Arsenal just re-signed him to another contract. Do you guys want to talk about that?
Fine. Well, okay. Let me start. Now, first thing, home. Arteta plays 3 in the back because Arteta knows Arsenal cannot defend. Okay? He's playing an extra defense. That's one. No.
But what's part of their defense is I digress.
No, the thing with David Luiz is it's a tricky situation for me. On David Luiz's performance, should he earn a new contract? No. But the important thing about David Luiz to Arsenal, because the team is so young and because they have young defenders, is that he's going to bring experience. Right? So in an ideal situation, Arsenal signed David Luiz with the intention that he's not playing. He's there at the club. He's guiding the young defenders like Saliba. And I'm assuming they're going to buy another centre-back. So David Luiz would be the 4th defender or the 5th defender at the club. And he's just the senior guy showing them how to be a pro. That is the intention of signing David Luiz. But remember, he was just an emergency signing. He got signed because he did what he did, right? So,
is it just me, or you're breaking out in and out? Is it just me?
I don't know.
You are a little bit. Keep going.
Yeah, but I'm finished. I just think in an ideal world, to get David Luiz is there not to play. He's there just to be the experience. And right? And Ryan, you can piggyback on this. We made the comparison of when we were at Shepherd. We had a lot of young players. I remember when coach told us, hey, don't ask no question, because we were young, especially me and Ryan. Because when me and Ryan came in as a freshman, we were young, we were eager to ask a whole lot of questions. Coach told us, don't ask no question, talk to the senior guys. And then those guys show us the right way and the procedure, how you become a professional. So they are an extension of the coach without the coach talking to you, which is what Luiz is going to eventually become. He's going to become a mentor. That's in an ideal world. That's what they're looking for. That's why they want him for an extra year.
So my question is to you, out of all the players, all the players that the club could have chosen to have as the mentor for young players, because Shelny would have been a better choice to be a mentor to the. Why didn't you guys just re-up his contract instead of shooing the guy off like that?
Well, we didn't shoot him off because he said he wanted to leave because at the time I think he wanted a 2-year deal and Arsenal was only offering a 1-year deal, just as what they offered David Luiz.
My thing is,
so want to get themselves in a buy.
Ryan, real quick, that's a lot of wages to pay for a mentor because he's on high money, right?
He took a wage cut on his new contract.
Okay, then I understand the mentorship. Go ahead, Ryan.
So we paid David Luiz $10 million for this one season, and he has pissed away a lot of points by himself, be it penalties, red cards, goals leading, goals directly. There has to be some form of stat. You know what I mean? If we were to talk to some guy who does, what do they call those guys who do the stats in sports? Analytics. Like mistakes directly leading to a goal. Guarantee you, David Luiz, although he's playing for
I can
top
name them for
6
you,
club.
Ryan. Hold on. I'll name them for you. Liverpool. I think he pulled down to a lot. Chelsea with Abraham. All the big games, this has been a David Luiz era. But go ahead.
Yeah. We just saw it after we saw it. So we can't just act like this has been happening just post-COVID. It was happening before COVID. So, but, to touch on what Bernard said, we don't have any leadership in that locker room. In fact, we have a young manager. You know what I'm saying? Like some of those guys played with Arteta. Like not the current guys, but I'm saying there are guys who are still playing in the Premier League who have played.
Also played with him.
You know what I mean? So some of them were there as youth players when he was at the club. So he needs, if he extended his contract, if that's one of his first moves as an Arsenal manager, that means that he feels he needs him there. It has to be for locker room purposes because obviously his play on the field has been very, very, very poor. But that's the only thing I can see. Arsenal has zero leadership. But what I will say is if you don't, your competitors, like, you have to look at what your competitors are doing. Man City would never keep a guy like David Luiz in their locker room for leadership quality. Chelsea, they gave him to us. Tottenham, no. Manchester United, maybe. I don't know. But, we can't be keeping guys like that in our locker room if our competitors aren't doing the same things. Like, the competitors, we can't compete if we're not leveling up on our competitors. You know what I mean?
So
you're on mute. You're on mute.
So one thing I will say,
we have a different plan. We have a different. Before Kevin, we have a different plan we have in terms of Arsenal is going straight into rebuild mode, like a whole bunch of academy players, and they're trying to just get a few experienced players to build around it. So it's different compared to Manchester City, who has the money to spend and who's looking for direct, right? Arsenal is straight in rebuild mode while they're trying to win at the same time. So that's a little bit different.
Well, I will say this, right? And it's something that you're seeing that has become more and more glaring in the past couple transfer windows. Good center backs are hard to find, right? So in reality, we can say David Luiz is as bad as he is, but that kind of tells you that the alternatives out there to David Luiz at a comparable price can't be too much better. Because if they had better alternatives, they would have went out and got them. And that's just, that's the reality of the situation. So, we can call David Luiz what he is, but he's still playing there at that level for a reason. That being said, another club that looks like they do need another center back as well to partner Laporte or Man City. We've seen Man City take a couple lumps over the last couple of weeks. One losing their title. Chelsea, turned them over at the weekend as well. They look to be wobbling a little bit. Aguero's hurt. David Silva's on his way out the door. It's his last season. So, Man City looked to be in the middle of a rebuild. And on top of that, you throw in their potential suspension that isn't going anywhere. What are Man City looking like going into the next season?
I can answer that, KG. I think you're being a little bit harsh. And then the first two games that they played, I think it was eight goals they scored and conceded 0. They were very unlucky to not, I wouldn't say unlucky, but it was a good game against us and they lost that game. But I think that's the most of what happened, right? They conceded 2 goals in 3 games. And then they beat Newcastle 2-0 and an easy win to get to a semifinal. So I think I definitely think their team is aging, but I think they have replacements that they need in terms of the midfield. I think when Silva leaves, Foden looks like a player. Phil Foden, who's an academy player. When with David Silva leaving, I think Foden can somewhat fill those shoes. And I think Pep came out and said that they're not going to buy anyone just because Silva's is leaving. Sane, I mean, they've done well without him. And honestly, I want to support Sane, but I feel like every manager he's played for so far, whether it be the German coach or whether it be Pep, he's just a hard guy to manage, right? I think he's somewhat full of himself, judging by the tattoo of himself on his back. So, I mean, those are two players they're losing. I think they gave Fernandinho a 1-year contract, but they definitely do need a center back. It's becoming very obvious on how to beat them. You literally just stay on their last man and just look for the break ball, and you can run past them. You got a 34-year-old Fernandinho, and then you got Otamendi, who's liable to make mistakes. So I think I read yesterday that they have already signed Koulibaly or are advanced negotiations with Koulibaly. So they need a world-class center back to come and support Laporte. The way that they play, they can't afford to be one-on-one with because they're so open. They can't afford to be one-on-one defensively, and that's what they're getting caught one-on-one, and they can't really defend it. So it's one of those things where they have the money and they'll make the necessary signings. But a lot of it, if you look at downfall and rebuilding, Pep hasn't signed a contract extension. And he recently commented and said that, he's just waiting. And he basically said everything that doesn't signify the fact that he's waiting for next month for UEFA to make their decision on what they're going to do in terms of their Champions League suspension. But Kevin De Bruyne and other players have been quoted in saying 1 year, okay, but if it's 2 years, then we got to kind of look at another club. So I think that's where the rebuilding can happen. But I honestly don't think they're in any kind of trouble. So that's just my 2 cents from what I've seen in the last 3 games.
Ryan, Bernard.
Yeah, the trouble. Listen, the trouble. Where there's smoke, there's fire, man. So the trouble is lingering over their head. But the current quality on the pitch, without a question, what I'm saying, it's unquestioned. So you just name some guys who they're getting rid of, but they're still who they're getting rid of or potentially losing, but they're still on the team. They've got Riyad Mahrez coming, who post-COVID was coming off the bench. You know what I mean? So their current depth on the squad, and we haven't even talking about Raheem Sterling, who has been putting up a historic season before COVID and last year. So, these guys have players for days and they have cash for days. But where there's smoke, there is fire. The Champions League thing is not going to go away. Financial fair play is not going away. Okay, we just saw Chelsea come off of a suspension as well. So, how much, if they buy Koulibaly, they may have to sell somebody. You know what I mean? I don't know what their current situation is with financial fair play, but they can't just go buy John Stones for $50 million anymore and put him on the bench. So this suspension is supposed to be proving a point. So we'll see if after the suspension, if Man City still continues to spend the way they have been doing in the past.
Well, for me, I think, I don't think they're in no trouble. I think this same current Manchester City team can challenge for the title next year. I think they can go toe-to-toe with Liverpool next year. Same team. We don't know, right?
But this is what I'm trying to say. They won't have the same team.
Yeah, but who they're losing? Let's say one.
Who are they losing?
They're losing. No, they're probably going to lose Leroy Sané because
They're
a big reason why he has.
Right,
yeah,
he hasn't been there all year.
No, wait. A part of it is he's not signing the contract extension, or he's not re-signing. So they're he got hurt, but he got healthy. But because he doesn't want to sign, they're basically not playing him. Right? That's one. They already made. No, Aguero is fine. They have already made replacement for David Silva because Phil Foden can. I'm coming to Aguero. Coming to Aguero. Phil Foden can play in practice, if not 2 or 3 teams very good player at his age. And he has been gaining experience when he comes on in 10 or so games. Plus, the quality that he's playing with in training every day. By the time he really starts playing, he's going to be a very good player. 2, Aguero, they already got it. But they're going to, and we know Man City, they're going to get other players. It's not even, we're talking about Koulibaly, who's probably in the conversation of the 2 or 3 best center backs in the world, and they can go get him on the drop of a hat. So those guys are fine. Man City don't rebuild, they replace. And they're going to, with the owners that they have, they're going to always be competing. They were winning before Pep just stamp his authority on them and make them a brand, an established brand. They're going to be winning after Pep. Are they going to be competing after Pep leaves? So Pep is great, but money is what controls everything.
But I think we had an interesting conversation earlier in the season on one of the pods that we had, that money is no longer one of the determining factors in success, because previously, like we've seen these teams that have spent so much. Look at Everton. How has Everton's spend worked out for them? Look at Villa. Go back and look over the last 3 transfer markets. Everton has spent the most money in the Premier League out of any team, and look at where they are. So go look over the last 3 transfer windows.
Yeah, but
and so what I'm saying is now we're looking at it from the perspective of just going out and splashing cash is a direct reflection of a team's success. But we're starting to see that now that everybody has money, it's becoming less of a determining factor of a club's success is the amount of money that you spend. It has to be spent well. Not spending money is no longer just good enough.
Right,
yeah,
KG. Go ahead.
No, go now.
Well, KG, you're talking about a team that has won 8 out of the last 9 domestic titles, right? We're not talking Everton and rebuilt. They can't even replace because they haven't even built yet. We're talking about a team that's already developed and finding little pieces. I know one player that has been rumored to go to Liverpool because he won't sign an extension at Bayern is Alcantara over from Bayern Munich. That would be a great fit for City, and don't be surprised if he's at City. You're talking about Koulibaly that plays the not play system where they play out of the back, so he fits the system. He's pacey. He's very intelligent. He just fits the mold. So these are players that are going to be you're essentially
they're good. The players that are going to be
team.
available. They're going to be available.
Right.
But the thing is City going to be able to sign them? And that's what I'm trying to explain to you. Like, are their circumstances?
You said just because you spend money doesn't mean you're going to be good. That's
right. But this is what I'm saying. So
this is another point.
No, it's. I asked you, are City in trouble in lieu of their current circumstance? Right. We're not just looking at City's current situation as we have to take into account with their current disposition. So right now, part of their disposition is the ban. Do you think that if Liverpool let me finish. Do you think if Liverpool or if Real Madrid or if PSG or if any of these teams that aren't facing the suspension that can also pay the Koulibaly fee, and he has a choice between going there or going to City, where do you think he's going to choose?
Well, if the ban happens, then absolutely they're going to be in trouble because they're losing players and they won't be.
Right.
We're talking about if the ban doesn't happen. That's if they can sign that player.
No. I'm saying.
What you said directly was just because you have money doesn't mean your team is going to improve. So that's off the basis of them signing players and it not working out. And you used 2 examples. You said Everton and Aston Villa. They did sign the players, right? And it didn't work out. So these are 2 different examples that you're giving me. So I'm a little. You get what I'm saying?
Well, because I'm referring back to the original question.
Oh, the original.
Right? Our Man City in trouble. And I think when I think that the reason why I think they're in trouble is when you encompass all of the different factors into their current situation and the way that the EPL is moving right now. I think that them getting the suspension is going to only compound their problems because it's going to create revenue issues for them to be able to spend in the future, and they're not going to be able to attract the top talent, even if they do have the cash, because they're not in Champions League.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's
yeah, but I don't necessarily agree with that. One, I don't necessarily agree with that because, as what I said before, this Manchester City team is on the verge. They won the Carlington Cup. They're in the semifinal of the FA Cup. They are about to be in the semifinal of Champions League. They already won the semifinal of the quarterfinal. They won the first leg like 2-1. This team, without any signing, can compete for the title next year, guaranteed, because they're going to be back on the Premiership. And just like if the ban comes, they're not going. Remember, again, for a transfer to happen, all three parties have to agree. And comes for, okay, we're not so simple. Who said? Whoever said you have to stay until your contract expires, and they keep the same team and compete next year. Manchester City is one of the, just like Chelsea, because of the money invested. With a transfer ban, it doesn't affect them as much as people think because they have so much depth. Remember, Manchester City I guarantee they have players out on loan that they can go back and go get somewhere. It's fine. Manchester City.
I don't think I agree to a point, but you know, Liverpool won the league by 23 points. They have to make up for those points somewhere. So I don't think I think they will compete at some level, but I wouldn't put my house on the fact that they will win the league with the squad that they have, and then plus losing players. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah, but right. No, for you to when you win the league by 23 points for the next combination of, I'm going to say it right, it's going to be a combination of things. One, they're going to be a lot more focused on the league, and Liverpool can be a little less focused on the league. So when you have a combination about that evens out. You understand what I'm saying? That's where my take on it is. And then you have a motivated Pep, and
but we don't even know if Pep is going to stay if they get the ban. That's what I'm trying. Like, there's a lot of problems brewing from that ban. So I think that ban is going to be key into the trajectory of where they're going.
Yeah, but he still has a contract there. You can't just, when you have a contract, you can't just get up and leave like it's nothing unless people agree that, oh, you can go.
I think he's got 1 year left on his contract. So, I mean, he might stay 1 year, but he could probably leave the following year is what I'm saying. So it's just, I think it's good. That ban is going to be everything. If it's a year, I think they'll be fine. If it's 2 years, you know, the window for a soccer player is not very long. So guys like Kevin De Bruyne is being quoted and saying, I don't know what I'm going to do if it's 2 years. 1 year I can do, 2 years, you know, I don't know. And honestly, I don't think with the team they have now, they can win Champions League. I think they'll get by Real Madrid because, contrary to everybody's belief, they're not that they're getting away with results in Real Madrid. So I think City still has their number. But yeah, I think it all depends on that ban.
Okay, awesome. So, oddly enough, so what I wanted to do is I wanted to do a quick European roundup for the last segment that we are going to have. So, first team that you just mentioned, Real Madrid. They're actually 2 points clear in the league after Barcelona dropped some points over the weekend. A few weeks ago, I don't know if you guys heard, but Gerard Piqué basically conceded the league title to Madrid. I don't know if he's playing mind games or, but apparently all things are not well at Barcelona as well. But let's start with Madrid. Nahum, you said that they're not playing that well. Can you give us a synopsis or a sum up of what you've seen from them so far after the break?
So the thing with Real Madrid, I think you know, in the last 2 or 3 years, they've been super effective. They don't necessarily play the best football, but they're super effective. When they get a counterattack, if you're not set up the right way, they will score goals, right? And so when I've watched them in the last 3 or 4 games, there's been it's not just Catalunya articles, their magazines. It's every magazine in Spain, every newspaper in Spain saying something's going on, because every single VAR decision or every single decision that doesn't go to VAR has went Madrid's way. And so there's a lot of controversy. So when Piqué says that, Piqué always has this thing where he thinks that the La Liga president supports Real Madrid. So he's basically saying you might as well just give it to them if you're going to continue to do this. Is his kind of like ploy. And so that's where they're at. With Madrid, the one bright thing about Madrid right now is those 3 front players. You could say 4. You have those 2 Brazilians, Vinicius Jr. and I forget the other young boy's name. But they're
Rodrigo, yeah.
Rodrigo, they're playing out of this world. Hazard is getting back into form, and Benzema scoring for fun. So it's one of those things where it's when they're on the counterattack, it looks good, but a lot of decisions have went their way. Like most recently, they just beat Espanyol, a team that's at the bottom by like 5-6 points, 1-0 with an amazing backflip from Benz. So it's one of those things where they're effective. They're getting those chances and they're scoring them. So I don't know. There's 6 games left to say that they're going to win it right now. It's tough. But the reason that some might say they're going to win it is because Barcelona is just in disarray. To me, they just sold one of their best midfielders in Arthur. I was a big fan of his. To get a 30-year-old Pjanic, which I don't know if he's going to fit the system really. So it's again, if you watch Madrid play, I wouldn't say the league is done, but I think most of it is going to depend on Barcelona versus it, depending on Madrid.
Do either of you have anything to add to Madrid?
Yeah. In regards to Madrid, I cannot, and I will not put my life or my house on Real Madrid because there's no Cristiano. They haven't done it without him in the Champions League. So until that happens, I'll stand aside and watch. And I am already convinced that Man City is going to destroy them. Okay. And destroy them badly, right? Because Vinicius Jr. and I've seen him play live, right? He's good young player, but he's nothing to make me like, oh wow, right? Benzema is good, but Benzema numbers was amplified because you're playing with Cristiano on your team, right? And yes, it has. His numbers have. Look at his numbers before Cristiano and his numbers after Cristiano. And I don't need to look at the numbers. You can tell there's a big difference. Cristiano has a big impact on all of those guys. Now you have the center back coming is a second leading scorer or third leading scorer who's taking PKs, who's taking free kicks, still can't defend, but he's scoring all over the right. How good are like? Come on. The reason why those guys are at the top is because Barcelona is the Messi shadow of Barcelona is so heavy. It's like you have a pit bull and a whole bunch of Barcelona, right? So they're so scared. Everything they do, they give the ball to Messi. Everything, all of them, right? So that is why Real Madrid is up there. It's just because the gap that everyone else. It's so big. It's not going to,
okay.
I cannot go with Real Madrid.
Madrid is very good at what Madrid is very good at what Man City can't do, and that's counterattacks. So it's gonna be tough. I think this leg. I think you're sleeping on Madrid, man. They're Vinicius Jr. and the Rodri kid are literally the fastest players I've seen in La Liga. And then Man City has an issue with dealing with counterattack teams and pace. So it's like the perfect storm. But that's just me as an observer.
Who do you think is gonna win?
I would put my house on City because it's just they're a better side. But because the way you're talking, it's a little I wouldn't put my house.
Now, home, you're talking just like me. You just said you're gonna put your house.
No, I said I wouldn't put my house. I might have come out the wrong way. There's no way I'll put my house on it. Because Madrid do what City like City are not good at so well. Like they're literally there's probably never been a better counter-attacking team than the Madrid team with Ronaldo, and then even without him. Like that's how they score their goals.
What's the combination of Real Madrid midfield?
You got Casemiro. You got.
What's the combination in terms of age of their midfield?
Bro, they rested for 3 months.
Everyone.
Right,
Probably
Fernandinho's 34. David Silva's 30. David Silva's 34.
No, misleading stats. Fernandinho plays center back for most of the season. Don't do most of the season. He plays center back.
It doesn't matter, B. He's on that back line.
Of course it matters.
Yo, Nahom makes a good point, man. These guys have been resting for 3-4 months. You know what I mean?
So what is City doing?
A Ballon d'Or
resting?
Right, but what I'm saying, it benefits an older guy going up against younger guys. If you've had, I mean, these guys don't get that much rest, even in the off season. They don't get that much rest. This is great for an older player. To touch on Nahom's point, you know what I'm saying? So, you know, in terms of Barca and Madrid domestically, you know what's going to happen, right? It's a 50-50 crapshoot. So it's a lot of what we're talking about in terms of football fans. You know, it's called what you call first world problem. You know what I mean? Like Barcelona have Coutinho out on loan. They just sold Arthur. They're talking about selling Dembele. These guys would be the best players on most of the clubs we love in the Premier League. You know what I mean? So a lot of the problems we're talking about is first world problems, but we know who's going to win the league at the end of the day. It's going to be Barcelona or Real Madrid. The Champions League conversation.
Who do you think will win it, Ryan?
What, the league?
Between those two. Yeah, between those two.
I think, I mean, you know, if we're going off of, you know, based on what we saw last season, you know, and the season prior, Barcelona has been winning the league. You know what I mean? So hunger for the league, you're going to probably say Real Madrid. You know, like they're probably more hungry just based on the fact that they haven't won it in a while. You know what I mean? And they've won the last, 4 prior to City, prior to Liverpool winning. They won the last 4 Champions Leagues. You know what I mean? So like, we're talking about first world problems. We're talking about a team that just won. Was it 4 Champions Leagues or 3 Champions Leagues in a row? We don't even know.
It was like 4
out of 5 in a row. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, so these are what you call first world problems, man. So those guys are going to be fine, if you ask me. The only guy who's get rid of Sergio Ramos, bring in Koulibaly, they be Twiggy.
Yo, why is this respect to Sergio Ramos? Are you guys crazy? Did you guys watch Madrid play? If anybody's out of position, it's Varane. When Sergio Ramos, if you look at Real Madrid's record, like without Sergio Ramos and with Sergio Ramos, you will see how good this guy is.
Now, remember I told you guys. You know, I told you guys earlier in the podcast.
You know what's funny?
Wait,
I want to say one thing. You know what? We just spoke about David Luiz, right? And how he's the red cards and all of that stuff. And it's just the politics and the bias. Don't Sergio Ramos have like the record for like the most red cards?
The most red cards in La Liga history.
Yeah, so wait.
No, but say this, look, B. So, but you want him out of your club.
Wait, let me finish.
No, wait. But you want him out of your club. So how come Sergio Ramos can play at Madrid for 20 years without Madrid fans are worse than you? Mm-hmm. If you get caught out that many times, it would be obvious, just like David Luiz is an obvious mistake for us. Mm-hmm. How does he in the starting lineup for the past? The guy played with.
But Nahom, that goes back to the point. So, when you have Cristiano Ronaldo and Benzema scoring 30 goals a season, it takes a lot of pressure, like I said earlier in the podcast, off the other players. These guys can just go out.
But they don't, because they don't defend. So you have to give them more defending. You know,
Nahom.
You know how much credit I give guys like PK?
Nahom, this is what we're saying, because I understand what you're saying. No one is saying Sergio Ramos is bad player. Listen. No, he's a very good footballer. right? That's one. Is he a very good defender? In my opinion, no. He's a defender, but very good defender, right? But a big part of it is the league that he's playing in and the team that he's playing with. It covers up some of his deficiencies because they have the ball. And two, a lot of times when you get caught out of position, because the league that he's playing in, like they don't have all that much quality when they're playing again. They are so much better than all the teams. They don't punish as much until they're playing against a Barcelona. So that is why someone like Sergio Ramos, when he makes, there's a lot of individual mistakes that he makes. You cannot deny that someone that has so much red cards, you can't get upset when someone questions him with someone that has so much red cards. A red card is a negative against a defender, and he has the record amount of red cards. That is something that you have to take in consideration. Despite how long he plays at the club.
But this is the thing, B. I think the reason you're highlighting these games is because you only watch these games. But if you watch against the Espanyol team, where they're coming, and his defensive positioning, because, like you said, he's a good footballer, so he reads certain things, right? When you look at these guys against other teams and you see the defending that they do, right? And you just talked about the age of their midfield. If you have an age of a midfield that's old, you would tend to get caught out more. But yet, if you look at their last 10, 15 games, they're getting outran in the midfield, but they're keeping the other teams aren't scoring. So my thing is, if I'm playing defense, I'm watching the games and I don't see a lot of goals are happening. I see him in the right positions. Just because he gets a red card against Barcelona or he gets a red card against Manchester City does not signify the fact that he's a bad defender.
Yeah, but
to say
again,
Sergio Ramos is
we're
an
not
elite,
saying we're just saying,
or he's not one of the greatest defenders.
Okay, I beg to differ, but we can agree to disagree.
Okay.
So the proof is in the CV of this player.
Yeah,
so
but
also
in the CV that he has a record leading in records.
But it goes back to the
overlook that part.
It goes back to the conversation that he's a great footballer, but not a great defender. That's not same thing with David Luiz. David Luiz has a CV too, like none other.
You can't compare it. Those two can never be in the same category. And I don't think you guys can have an intelligent conversation. No disrespect to you guys about a La Liga player because you don't watch a lot of La Liga. You watch La Liga against Barcelona.
Next question. Next question.
So next,
KG mute that hole.
Where you get that from?
So this is Ryan's point to La Liga was they won it the year before. They won it the year before. Your point to La Liga is Ronaldo's not there, so I don't rate them. That kind of tells me you're not watching La Liga.
All right. So
what about that tells you you're not watching La Liga?
So the last club.
So you're the only person with BN Sports. You're the only man BN Sports.
I'm the only one in this group right now that watches La Liga. 100%.
The last club that we're going to cover only has a 13-game unbeaten streak.
Okay.
The much maligned Manchester United. So we finally got to see glimpses of what they've been claiming to be their world-class midfield mixture of McTominay, Pogba, and Bruno Fernandes. What has been you guys' thoughts on the new look Manchester United with Rashford on the wing, Martial up top, and their new high-powered midfield? Now, actually, Ryan, would you like to go ahead and start?
Nah, let Nahom take this one. Go ahead, Nahom. It looks like he needs to calm down.
No. You take this one.
No, I want to. Let me just say my piece because I have to go. Let me say this one piece. I'm watching them. Two things. One, Nahom, I have BN Sports and I watch La Liga. That's the first thing. So let me just get that out there.
Then you got to give analysis like you watch that.
It's okay. Let me just leave that right there. And two, Paul Pogba is still cut and above the best player at Man United. He made one pass who I think unlike a half bounce that probably one player in England that could make that pass easily. He's still not fit yet, but you could tell he's still he's still the best player at Man United by a mile. And with him on their team, they can go really far. The other guys are just complementary players to him. Okay?
All right, B. Have a good night, man.
All right. Take it easy.
Ryan, what are your thoughts?
Yeah. My thoughts are, first of all, it's good to see Paul Pogba, back in the league. I'm a fan of. I always speak on the fact that, the Premier League needs to hold on to their stars. So hopefully Manchester United can hold on to Paul Pogba and give him some more time with Bruno Fernandes. I think if they have more time together, I don't know about Scott McTominay, he's still young, but I think if you can give Bruno Fernandes, Paul Pogba, and what's the other guy? Is it Fred? Some more time together.
Yeah, Fred.
I think they can potentially build a dynamic midfield. So it's going to take time. It's fresh out of COVID. And remember, before COVID, Pogba wasn't playing. So he's fresh off of a injury without playing time. So give him some more time. If they can hold on to him for next season, I don't think they should sell him. I think they should hold on to him and, give him an opportunity to grow in that midfield and see where it can go. But although I'm not a United fan, I'm a fan of the Premier League. I always say that. So I'm excited to have him back on the pitch. Where's not?
Well, it's for United. I agree with every point that you made, Ryan. It's like Pogba's a new signing. And as much as I hated on Bruno Fernandes initially, guy's a player, man. He's
a baller.
He's three steps ahead of everyone on the pitch outside of Pogba. He's always, his head is on a spin. He's always trying to play that forward ball, always trying to get a shot off. And I think he's a natural winner. Like, you can tell the passion that he puts into playing.
He brings a different attitude and swag to the
Exactly. Guys, sure. And I think he's a signing that could potentially keep Pogba at Manchester United. And I think with Manchester United, it's going to come down to this. I think they need Sancho very, very bad, because Marcus Rashford, as much as he's a good player, he hasn't been consistent enough in the EPL for us to be like, yo, he's a superstar. You know what I'm saying? I love Marcus Rashford, but he's just not that yet. So I think they need they need that extra protection if Marcus Rashford is having the year that he's having, now. Same thing with Martial. You don't know which Martial you're gonna get. So I think once they get that, their back line is pretty set. Their midfield is somewhat deep. I think they could probably use one more signing, because I think Matic is leaving, Mata's leaving, and a few others are leaving.
I think Matic has another year on his deal.
Okay, so Mata's just staying, but guys like Lingard, Mata, and those guys are leaving. So I think they could use a little more role players. But in terms of that 11 man starting lineup, they look pretty solid. I think solid to stay in top 4 though, not solid enough to win the league. Obviously, it's a 2-man show. Man.
These guys, if there's one team that I can say is coming, like, they have a good balance of some young guys. They've signed so many players in the past transfer windows. You can only get it wrong so many times. So the squad is finally starting to come together. I think where they may need to actually upgrade, and depending on how the season finishes, you may not see this upgrade, is the manager. But KG, why don't you go ahead and answer this question as well? I want to hear from you on that.
Me, as for United, I'm just not a believer. I think that they rely on a lot of their commercial pull to kind of mask over their issues, and they, as a big club, they do intimidate some of the smaller clubs in England. And then you see sometimes that these clubs roll over, when they're playing United, and they play that I don't know, it's just weird. I'm never a believer. They've done this before. We've seen them go on an 18-game unbeaten streak already. So I'll believe it, when the new season starts and they come out firing again. Until then, it is what it is.
What do you think about the midfield of Pogba and Bruno Fernandes?
I'm not sold on either. Again, they
KG, you sound like you don't like Manchester United, man. Those guys.
No, I'm not sold on either. Pogba's never really performed, and this has always been my knock on Pogba. He's never performed for long periods of time. Like, and that's the thing about the Premier League. Like, you can't win the Premier League in the span of a month, but if you're off or if your team is off for a month and you drop enough points in that period of time, you 100% will lose the Premier League. And that's the thing about Pogba. He hasn't ever shown a long sustained period of being the best player on his team at his top level. Like, he shows it in fits and starts. He'll show it for a month here and then be off for 2 months. You know what I mean? So again, in the Premier League, you need to have, like, you can have an off week, but your consistency needs to be at an extreme level. And I've just never seen that from Paul Pogba. And as goes, Manchester United goes.
To be fair, though, like he's had how many managers since he's been at United, and the players around him, I don't think haven't built a good team around him. I feel like once he gets the support, and like look at him for France, man. He like in tournaments, he consistently plays well when great players are around him. Same at Juve. He wasn't a superstar, but he had good players around him, and he played well.
Well, that's what I said. And again, as the best player on your team, you need to be in the Premier League. The best player needs to perform at a consistent level for your team to win a championship. Again, so it's like
but I don't think anybody's talking about Manchester United winning a championship. I think it's saying they're going to improve. They're nowhere near winning a championship. I don't think.
Well,
it's going to be great still.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. As long as Paul Pogba is their best player, I don't necessarily think that they're ever going to get too much better than what you see them doing now.
I agree with that comment. They need to sign better. They need to sign more players still. Like, I think a Sancho would do wonders for those guys.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think Paul Pogba. You can win with Paul Pogba being your best player. I don't think that.
Well, it's not even that he's their best player. It's like nobody's even close. You know what I'm saying? Like, who's next?
Right.
You know?
But Bruno's pretty close. Bruno's close.
No, he's not. We didn't even know who Bruno
Bruno's
was.
a baller.
You got to do a little bit more. But he's a good player. He's a fantastic player.
But that brings us.
And Brian, hold on. Did you say there's no other team that I see close to City and Liverpool outside of United? Is that what you said?
Listen, I'm telling you.
So hold on.
United.
So the team below us is, without any signing, is showing a higher potential.
Right, and remember, those guys didn't have Pogba for the entire season. So those guys are coming, man. I'm telling you. And look, you guys are talking about they may sign Sancho. But KG wanted to go ahead. KG, you about to say something about to conclude?
No, I was about to wrap up. I was about to wrap up the pod. So go ahead.
No. We good.
You don't even talk about Chelsea. You just talk about every other club. We just won 3 in a row on a spin. What kind of fan are you? Funny thing is, this is the first podcast we didn't really talk about Arsenal. Like we kind of talked about David Luiz, but not Arsenal. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Or Chelsea. Who are those guys?
Well, it was time for a switch up this week. Those guys are exhausting. Those guys are exhausting sometimes, man. I need a break from Arsenal talk.
Okay.
Maybe next week.
Maybe next week.
Another family.
Fun, fellas.
If you have any comments, concerns, questions, feel free to leave us a message on the comments below. We're now on YouTube, the Soccer Fam. We do have a website, thesoccerfam.com. We are on Patreon, the Soccer Family. Feel free to drop us a message, and we look forward to seeing you at the next family reunion. Have a good one.